Hello everybody. I had originally spent a while working on this video guide for the pure shred druid Lilith build, and over that time I responded to a lot of comments trying to help figure out what I was missing or wasn't including in my written guide that was giving you guys a hard time achieving the same damage that I was doing. I also received some pretty good suggestions and ideas during that time and probably tested well over 50 to 100 more pools on Uber Lilith with different skill points, aspects, timings, and rotations. And I've decided that this is probably the easiest and most consistent build to help you get your kills before Season 1, which is using Tornado and Shred as a double core skill setup, rather than using just pure Shred. The Tornado version has way less RNG than pure Shred, it's much more consistent, vulnerable at time, and it has way easier spirit management if you run Perfect Storm. If you're struggling on damage still, I recommend swapping out the Perfect Storm key passive for Ursine's Strength, but you're going to need to weave in Storm Strikes between your Tornado cast in order to maintain your Spirit, because the build no longer will self-sustain its Spirit without that passive. So I'm going to walk through my kill here, and then I'll get into my specific gear setup. Timestamps will be in the description. Basically, I pre-pop my Grizzly Rage, and I wait until my Rage buff has about 40% to half of its duration left, as you can see right here. And then I start the fight by running in and throwing some preemptive Tornadoes, Hurricane, and Blood Howl. You just keep your distance while spamming Tornadoes until Grizzly Rage has like 2 to 3 seconds left in their duration, and then I just go for my Blurred Beast Shred. If she doesn't die on the very first Shred, either because you miss a crit or your damage is kind of low, just quickly evade out and go for a second Shred. You'll need about 25% cooldown reduction in order for your Grizzly Rage to be back up by phase 2 if you do this strategy. And if you can't manage that with your Toxic Claws amulet, you'll have to probably do an amulet and offhand swap right before the fight starts for maximum CDR gear. Just put the CDR gear on, pop your Rage, and then swap back to your DPS gear and wait until, like I said, about 50% of your Rage duration's left. If you aren't going for a speed kill like I was trying to, you may want to try and start the fight even earlier in your Grizzly Rage, and just spam Tornadoes longer to build up more poison. This may make the one-shot easier and more consistent, and reduce the risk of you not being able to build up enough damage before your Rage runs out. For phase 2, you just pop your Grizzly Rage as early as possible, like as soon as the cooldown is up, ideally before phase 2 starts, and then once she starts this animation like she's forming from the blood puddle, pop your Hurricane and Blood Hell and start throwing out Tornadoes ahead of time, because they'll latch onto her once she's attackable as long as they're near where she starts. Stay at a distance and not in melee to make your Shred dash simpler, so you don't have to evade out, and just keep throwing Tornadoes for about 2 to 3 seconds after she becomes attackable. After that amount of time, just go for your Shred jump again, and you may have to dash away and Shred a few times in a row in order to push her to the first breakpoint. Just keep doing this Shred evade combo until she hits that last little bit of health. Once her health stops moving at like that 2% point, just make sure your Spirit is full, and go through the motions of her breaking all the side platforms. Once she's on the last side platform, and it looks like it's about to break, you can try and match your timing to what I'm doing here, but I just go to the middle when it's safe, and when the platform looks like it's about to fall off. You want to pop your Grizzly Rage a bit early before this, and start building poison on her by throwing a few Tornadoes while she's still at the side here, and then go to the middle and start throwing Tornadoes at the center like I'm doing to prepare for final teleport back. Again, you can keep your distance, you don't have to sit on top of her like in the pure Shred build, and after about 1 to 2 seconds of her being back to the middle, just start your Shred, Evade, Shred rotation until she dies. This is why you want +3 evades on your boots. I highly recommend, when you kill her, to start running circles around this platform, because she may do one final FU mechanic and throw her one-shotting slashes. You can dodge this pretty consistently by just running in a circle like you can see me doing here, but don't stop running circles until you see the loot on the ground, because she does quite a few of these even while the screen is going black. This tip sheet that I have here, which I put at a few points throughout the video, was specifically made for the pure Shred build, not the Tornado variant, but a lot of it still is relevant for the Tornado version, however some of it isn't. I went over my full thoughts on how to play the Tornado version out, so there's nothing much from that I really need to add here if you watch the first few minutes. The only thing I will add as far as Shrednado goes is that I have tried a two-hander setup with Blurred Beast on the two-hander, and I do think it works, and it might actually do even more damage, but you lose out on a lot of CDR and crit chance from your offhand, so it's more RNG on crits, and I definitely think you need an offhand with cooldown reduction to item swap pre-fight for your Grizzly Rage. I would go with whichever setup you have better gear for. If you have a much better two-hander than a main hand offhand combo, then put Blurred Beast on the two-hander and move Storm Chaser to whichever piece you're previously using Blurred Beast on, which for me was my ring. Quick FAQ on my skill points. Bad Omen is intentional in both versions of the build. This procs a lightning bolt pretty frequently when you damage her, and that bolt, I'm pretty sure at least, can crit. This crit, even though it doesn't do much damage, ramps Rampaging Werebeast aspect, which gives you crit damage every time you crit. Defensive posture helps keep your fortify up, which gives you more damage because of the retaliation aspect on your weapon. Raging Shred is bad, you don't need the poison proc. Take Primal Shred so that you can dash and proc Blurred Beast on every single part of your Shred combo. And even on the Shred, the pure Shred build, I do not like Lupine Ferocity. This power doesn't do anything unless it procs exactly when you go for your Blurred Beast jump, and Hurricane often eats it because Hurricane is a werewolf skill due to Tempest Roar. Use Ursine Strength instead, it's way better, and by the way gives you like 4,000 of my crazy attack power number you all keep talking about. If you are playing Tornadoes, you can use Perfect Storm or Ursine Strength depending on if you need damage or just want easier spirit management. Alright, I'm going to go through my gear, Paragon tree, and some other clips now. Almost all of this audio was recorded a few days ago before I even tried the Tornado variant, but it's still relevant for both builds because the builds are really almost identical in terms of gear and Paragon. I'd rather leave in the pointers in discussion on the Shred only version because I originally made this build wanting a pure melee Uber Lilith build. Obviously Tornadoes don't accomplish that, but if you're like me and want to stay a melee purist, you can go ahead and follow the regular Shred variant. I apologize for the audio being very scuffed and poor quality. I'm not a content creator, I'm using a cheap headset mic, but hopefully some of you can still find this helpful and will be able to tolerate that. I originally made the video for a few friends to see. I didn't expect to get as much attention as it got, so that was really cool, and I thank you guys for that. Alright, I'll let the rest play out with whatever I threw together earlier this week. Now for my gear and stats. Tempest Roar is here to keep your spirit healthy and let you use Hurricane and Storm Strike inside of Grizzly Rage. This helps you get vulnerable time on her during Rage and gives you more damage to Shred because of my boots, which have Storm Shifter. 2 ranks to Shred is a lot. That puts my Shred at 14 out of 5 ranks. It's a big damage boost. Also, it's the only helmet in the game that gives you crit damage, which hey, it's another multiplier. You can't get many offensive stats on the boots, but willpower is the best. All stats can be good to help reach some Paragon node breakpoints. Movement speed is good for when you have to dodge stuff, and a bit of defensive stats aren't bad because you do want to preserve your fortify as much as possible. This is for retaliation on my weapon here. The more fortify I have, the more damage I do. This is up to a 40% multiplier, which is massive. I lose a ton of damage if I have low fortify, so some defensive stats are nice to have, just so that she doesn't instantly delete your fortify. Getting the implicit passive on your boots to have extra ranks of dash, or extra evades rather, is really important for this build. It'll make it so much easier to play if you have 4 evades, because it makes it really easy to just evade, dash back in with Shred, evade, dash back in with Shred, evade, dash back in with Shred for Blurred Beast. I highly recommend you find boots that have +4 ranks or +4 dashes. It'll just make things easier. The hammer here is not ideal. This weapon in general is not ideal. An axe would have been better because of the bonus damage to healthy enemies. It would help push her in phase 2 faster to not get those tumors to spawn, and it would make one-shotting her in phase 1 a bit easier if you manage to jump her in the first 20%, which should be easy enough to do. Core skill damage is also not that great on a weapon. I'd rather have crit damage or even damage to poison enemies or any other less conditional additive damage bonus. This is because core skill damage does not apply to my Stormclaw, and I'll get to that in a minute. Going back to my chest, Mad Wolf's Glee is just an extra 2 ranks to Shred. Again, 14 or 5 ranks to Shred is pretty damn good. It's a good damage boost. Poison damage is also nice to help build Blurred Beast damage. Rampaging Werebeast is on my gloves. This is another essential aspect in how I massively ramp my damage. All of those little hits I do, including those lightning bolt procs I mentioned earlier, are infinitely scaling my crit damage, and you'll notice my attack power will go up throughout my Grizzly Rage because every second I'm in rage I'm getting 3% damage and ever increasing crit damage. This is why I don't like to jump her too early, because I want to maximize as much crit damage as I can before attempting my one shot. The only thing you need to make sure you do is jump her before she hits around 70%, as she'll intermission at that point. So I like to do it around when she hits the first diamond on her health bar, although you can go a bit sooner than that. Pants are a good defensive piece. There's very little offensive stats here, but you can get willpower, which is very good. Fortified generation may be worth getting where you can due to the retaliation aspect. My offhand is accelerating, faster attack speed is more toxic claws, and crit damage ramp. Pausing right here just to quickly interject, it is either this aspect or the main hand with retaliation that I would replace if I'm running the tornado build. You want similar stats to this, like what I have here, and a high item level on your weapons is very important. Try to have both main hand and offhand over 800 item level, because this will directly impact your shred's damage and is very, very important. My 2 rings are pretty ideal except for the low crit damage rolls. I recommend these exact 4 stats. Vulnerable and crit chance are the most important, followed by crit damage, and the last stat can be a few different things, but I like damage to close enemies. Any other additive damage bonus you can find is nice, as long as it works with Stormclaw as well, meaning it doesn't apply specifically to werewolf things or shred. We have Blurred Beast here and Direwolf, both are important and self-explanatory. And my neck is actually one of my worst pieces. It has one stat on it that I like, although the percent added damage isn't bad either. But the one stat I like is a Toxic Claws +3. You need that. Some of you questioned why I neck swapped at the beginning of my video. It was not to proc a bug or exploit or do anything funky with my passives. It was literally just because this neck doesn't have CDR on it, and the neck I swapped did. It's essential to have Grizzly Rage back up before she spawns in Phase 2. That was very hard for me to do when I was one-shotting her in Phase 1. So I put a CDR neck on, I popped Grizzly Rage, and then I swapped necks back. This made my Grizzly Rage have a lower cooldown by 5.5 seconds, which is a lot of seconds, and it helps get my Grizzly Rage back up in time. So I have the CDR neck on, I pop Grizzly Rage, and then I instantly go back to the Toxic Claws neck just to benefit from the cooldown reduction. That is the only reason I did it. I wasn't doing anything else. I wasn't trying to get the Envenom passive on here to do anything. It was just for cooldown reduction. I actually learned while testing to make things a bit more consistent that I can pop Grizzly Rage and just sit there for 5 seconds waiting before I even spawn the boss. I don't need all 17.5 seconds of Grizzly Rage in Phase 1. So just wait a few seconds to let the cooldown get lower and then go. And 12 to 14 seconds of Grizzly Rage should be all that you need. Just make sure you go for your one tap before Grizzly Rage wears off. Ideal stats on your neck are probably CDR, Toxic Claws +3, Spirit Cost Reduction will help you with your Spirit Gen issues, because I know a few people are having problems with Spirit Management. And then either movement speed or some kind of additive damage bonus would be good. Honestly, the last stat isn't too important. But that about covers the gear, and I hovered over my pieces, so hopefully you saw exactly what sets I was running. I really don't even think my gear is as optimized as it could be, but it's obviously pretty good. So moving on to Spirit Boons, nothing too complicated. I bond with the Deer Spirit for extra attack speed and crit chance. Apparently Avian Wrath is bugged and is additive, not a multiplier, so I don't like to use it as much. I think crit chance smooths out the RNG, and attack speed is really nice to just help build up those Toxic Claws quicker and proc more crits, which again ramps my Werebeast. Extra duration on the ultimate is just the obvious choice. It's the best option of these 4. And then Masochistic to keep me healthy, which is very important. You want to stay healthy due to one of our glyphs, which I'll show you in a second. Combo for the Storm, I just found this unnecessary. I would rather min-max my damage within a single Grizzly Rage by bonding with the Deer, than to get slightly more Grizzly Rages off with lower damage in each one by bonding with the Snake. For stats, I'll let you pause and look at them really quick. I'm not going to go through each and every single one. I'll just say my crit chance here is around 74.7% with a Cruelty Elixir and the extra 6% from my Predatory Instinct, which is a skill on your skill tree that gives you 6% extra crit chance. Yes, you can still get unlucky. I have missed plenty of Blurred Beast crit procs, but I've tried to lower my chances of being unlucky as much as possible. One other important note about my stats is willpower. A lot of people forget that main stat is a multiplier. It is one of the biggest multipliers. I have 920 willpower. That is a 92% multiplier. If you have 620 willpower, you're basically losing out on a 30% multiplier that I have that you don't. That is massive. You shouldn't be underestimated, and it does double dip in your Stormclaw as far as I know. High willpower is also a major part of why my sheet damage is so high. I know a lot of people are asking about that, but don't put much stock into this number. It's weird how it calculates and what it takes into account and what it doesn't. Any kind of like additive damage bonus, some of them do take into account in this and some don't. It really is random. I don't care much for it. But moving on to the Paragon board, my Paragon board should be the same thing as in the build link, except for this 1 point reclamation. I have no idea where this point came from or where I had it on in the build link. I literally couldn't figure it out. I went through the tree from top to bottom and I didn't know where this point came from. So I just left it there and it seems fine. A note on my glyphs, it's very important to have these all at 21. Level your glyphs, it is extremely important. When you say you're copying my build perfectly, I hope that means all your glyphs are level 21 and you're using the exact same glyphs I am using. Tracker helps provide way more damage and duration to toxic claws. I found this to be very important in helping me do big nukes. I saw someone comment in my last video that having a level 21 tracker also helped them achieve the same numbers I was getting. Fang and Claw is okay damage, but mostly it's just for that 12 times multiplier for the bonus that you get there. Werewolf is just a bunch of free additive damage. Guzzler is even more free additive damage. And this is why you want to stay healthy. This is why I took Masochistic, because I want Guzzler to be active at all times. I know I just said not to put much stock into the sheet damage, but I'm just going to show you how big this glyph is. So, like I said, my attack power on the sheet is 17.5k. Look at what happens to it when I take Guzzler out. It went down by almost 6,500. That is a lot. Like I said, I don't put much stock into that number, but obviously these glyphs are massive and matter a lot. Please level them to 21 if you're going to do this. It helps a ton. Spirit is really good here. I didn't have a lot of extra points to squeeze up more crit damage from it, but it's a good amount of crit damage, and more importantly, I just wanted the 12% multiplier from the bonus. And then finally, Exploit. Vulnerable is one of our biggest multipliers, so I wanted to maximize this glyph for that. It's one of our best glyphs. I mean, I'm using Fang Claw mostly for a 12% multiplier, and this glyph is basically triple that by giving us over 30% vulnerable. So, yeah, those are the glyphs. Please level them up. It's very important. If you're copying my build, that means you're copying the glyphs and they're level 21 as well. Alright, last thing, a quick note on what I mean by double dipping on Stormclaw. You want Stormclaw on your neck. You want it to be as high roll as possible. 42 isn't even as high as I would have liked it. I've had 44s on other necks, but they didn't have toxic claws on them, so I had to take the hit. Basically, when you shred, all these additive and multiplicative damage bonuses I've been talking about apply to that shred. So you have this regular shred hit, and that number gets added to by all these different additive bonuses to get you a new number. That number is going to be much bigger than your regular naked shred. Then that new number gets multiplied on as well by all these multiplier bonuses to give you an even bigger number. And then there's Blurred Beast, which is a different thing entirely. Blurred Beast is damage that gets put onto the original shred before all these bonuses. So you have the shred plus Blurred Beast combination that then gets all these additive bonuses applied, that then gets all these multipliers applied, and then you have this massive crit that is actually probably more Blurred Beast damage than it is shred damage, but it doesn't matter, it all shows up as one big hit anyways. So Stormclaw then takes 42% of that number, and in theory that should be a smaller number than the shred, but it ends up being way higher because of this double dipping. It's not 42% of it anymore, okay? That new Stormclaw white hit number, like you see my screen cap here, it's 258 million. That's obviously not 42% of this 37 million. That's because that 42% of my shred got all those additive and multiplicative bonuses applied to it again. So I shred here for like 37 million, right? 42% of that is around 15.5 million damage or so. That's basically your starting point. That's like if you had an ability on your bar and you hovered it and it says it deals 15.5 million damage. My shred on my bar says it does 41,000 at its highest third combo hit. So you can imagine a 15.5 million damage starting point is pretty ridiculous. That 15.5 million then has all of my additive bonuses applied to it, which gives me a new number. That's, I don't know, I'm not doing math right now, but it's probably something like over 40 million damage. And then that new number gets all these multipliers applied to it again, except for crit, because Stormclaw can't crit, but things like my 159% vulnerable damage, the 92% willpower multiplier I have, all those little multipliers for my Paragon glyphs, all my aspects, it all gets applied to the Stormclaw hit, and the next thing you know, I hit her for 258 million damage and one-shot her. That's how Stormclaw works. That's why I don't care for things like core skill damage on my weapon, because Stormclaw is not a core skill and this won't benefit from that stat. It won't benefit from crit damage either, but crit damage is a bigger impact on my shred than core skill damage is, because one's a multiplier and one isn't, so that's how I one-shot her.
Obviously, I couldn't one-shot her in phase 2. You only have like 3 to 5 seconds to build up your Toxic Claws and start jumping in order to burn her to 80% HP or so to skip those tumor spawns. If I had more time like I did in phase 1, who knows how high I could have gone, but it's just not possible if you want to skip mechanics in phase 2.
Alright, that about covers the gear setup. If that's all you wanted to know, you can click off the video now. I'm just going to go through a few clips, mostly discussing Pure Shred gameplay advice, and some advice for phase 2. I will say, with Pure Shred, I was still able to one-shot her with about 80% consistency, but with Tornadoes I can do it almost every time. So both are good, but Tornado variant just seems a bit more consistent. Most of the times where I couldn't one-shot her with Pure Shred is when Vulnerable fell off early, and the Tornadoes just seem to solve that issue. In this clip now, I'm just showing two things. First is that there's no real visual indicator for when to go for your Blurred Beast proc. I can basically do this blindly by just using her health bar alone, and my advice is pretty much go when she hits the first triangle on her health bar. I don't know why I kept calling them diamonds before, they're clearly triangles, but that's okay, I was always better at calculus and geometry. And when her health bar is purple for vulnerable, here, that's all I looked for. I waited for the triangle, I checked for purple, and I went, and it works. I also am just showing how hard crit damage ramps throughout Grizzly Rage, and why you want to wait towards the end of Grizzly Rage if possible to go for your Blurred Beast jump, because crit ramps absurdly fast over the setup.
So then there's phase 2. Here's a clip of showing a big mistake that you can make that I made, which is what I said, not having Grizzly Rage pre-popped before she spawns. You can literally count the seconds you have to burst her before she spawns the tumor things. That's how much time you have to get her to around 75 or 80%. It's a very tight window. You need to be spot on with your ramp and jump to make sure you beat that timer. Even popping Grizzly Rage 1 second after she's attackable feels like a death sentence to me in that check. You can definitely still kill her after this point. I've gotten her to 1% like this by just doing the fight properly pretty much. But you're going to have to learn and do the mechanics and dodge the fireballs and whatever other stuff she does. And in the second clip, I did my neck swap. I waited a few seconds at the start so that my Grizzly Rage would have a shorter cooldown as possible after she dies in phase 1. And you can see I had my Grizzly Rage up in time before she spawns, and now I'm able to comfortably beat that check. I almost always meet the timing when I have Grizzly Rage pre-popped before that phase. I mean literally almost always. It's so important to have Grizzly Rage up before she spawns. I can't really beat the check unless I have that happen, it seems. And even when you do beat that first tumor spawn, the damage check doesn't stop there. It's just to note, this whole phase is pretty much a constant damage check until you get her to about 1%. Once you phase her to the first platform break, you need to keep the pressure up, you need to keep pushing her to the next break point in her health. If your damage ever slows down too much or you don't meet that check, as soon as that platform breaks and she goes back to the middle, instead of moving on to the next platform, she's just going to spawn the tumors and do mechanics like normal. So you want to push her as hard and as much as possible during these small windows where she's really not doing anything, breaking the platform. That way you can hopefully just push her to 1% as soon as possible. And then once she's at 1%, she's not going to do any mechanics, she's just going to go through the motions of breaking every platform until she has a little square at the very end. And at that point, she can still spawn tumors and do mechanics. She's going to be immune once she hits 1% until she breaks everything. So once she goes to the middle with that tiny little square, don't stop pushing damage. Pop your Grizzly Rage, do everything possible to kill her, because if you don't finish that last couple percent of her health when she's in the middle, she can still kill you very easily. Here you can see I killed her, but I still died because I suck at video games and I thought she was done with her little rage slashes, and I was wrong. But even if you die like this, you will still probably get the achievement and title. I know because this happened on my rogue, but you will not get the horse. The horse doesn't drop unless you're alive by the time she drops her loot. Alright, that's it. That's everything I wanted to go over. That's it, go home. I put some extra notes into my build guide, which I will link again in the description. Pretty much a couple other things I found out while testing. If I find anything else out while testing, I'll probably pin a comment going over it. Or if I forgot anything, I'll probably pin a comment that says it. But good luck on your kills. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you figured out what you're not copying from a build or what I'm doing differently than you. I don't know. Hopefully you can get it before season 1. So good luck everybody, and thank you for all the views and stuff. Like I said, I wasn't expecting the video to get anything more than like 10 views from my friends, so it was an interesting moment. Thanks everybody, and good luck.